Greetings and welcome to Discovering Jai Uttal. That's me. This is a 9-part journey through the stories, music, teachers, the challenges, and the moments of grace that have shaped my life and continue to guide my path of devotion. I hope you enjoy. As a teenager in New York City, I found myself drawn to everything Indian. I would see posters from India or like little exotic import stores, and I don't know why. I can't really say why. We talk about past lives and karma, sanskaras. That doesn't mean all that much to me, but it could all be true, So I would search these record stores for albums from India. And perhaps the two that most, kind of really blew my mind was one, Classical Ragas on Sarod by Ali Akbar Khan. It was a raga Chandranandan that I later learned he composed. And the other one is called Street Music of India, The Bowels of Bengal. And this one really blew my mind. It's folk songs, devotional folk songs by a group called the Bowels. The Bowl is a Bengali word, and it means God intoxicated. And so there are these groups of people, and I guess you could say little bands, little mini families that travel all around, mostly Bengal, and sing these ecstatic songs of their songs are kind of have so much of the human life experience as well as the presence and longing and absence of the divine. And I found the same energy in Ali Akbar Khan's music. Sometimes it was just so rough, so full of fire. And other times it was so soft and so deeply pulling on the heart. Anyway, a little time went on, and I remember in 1968, I think, either 67 or 68, there was a big festival in Central Park in New York called the Human Be-In. Be-In, like human being, but human be-in. And it was called the Gathering of the Tribes. It was a full-on, one of the first really big hippie festivals in New York. So I went there, and, I was young, but I definitely felt like I fit in. Of course, I didn't really fit in because I didn't know anybody. I couldn't talk to anybody. It was kind of like everybody spoke a different language, but I knew this was my people. And so I'm walking around here. Everybody's on acid. I wasn't, but I guess I was a little too young. I don't know. I wasn't, but I was walking around, and then I saw this group of strange people standing around. Not standing. They were dancing. One guy was playing a double-headed drum. They were playing cymbals, and men and women, a small group, maybe 8 people, I guess, in my memory. And by the side of them was this elderly Indian man who seemed to be encouraging them. And they were chanting a mantra. They were singing kirtan, and I'd never heard it before. And something about that sound really, really, really fascinated me. And slightly confused me, and really piqued my curiosity, but not just mental curiosity, my kind of molecular curiosity, you might say. So I stood around them, and then I chanted a little bit with them, and the next couple of days I saw that they were doing the same thing down in the West Village in Tompkins Square Park, and I sang with them and just sort of followed them around a little bit. And, well, I didn't really know it at the time, but this was the very, very beginning of the Hare Krishna movement. Of course, I didn't join the movement or anything like that, but it was my first experience of kirtan, and I really, really liked it. So time went on, and I graduated from high school, and, well, gosh, the rule book said I had to go to college. So I went to Reed College in Portland, Oregon. I guess I wanted to go as far away from New York and my family as I could possibly get. And so, I'm checking it out, and I made a friend very quickly, I made a friend on the airplane, a fellow named Mark Gerhard, who later changed his name to Gangadhar, who is still one of my very, very best friends. It's amazing how that can be, right? Anyway, we're waiting for classes to start, and the evening before the first classes, as a freshman, there's a concert by Ali Akbar Khan, and I'm kind of excited about this because I had listened to his albums. Meanwhile, we were, of course, given the time, we were experimenting with psychedelics, and I'm loving the experimenting with psychedelics. And so I took mescaline before the concert. And as we know, most of the experiences that we have while we're on substances, they can be great experiences, but they fade away pretty fast. So anyway, I sat in the front row and I watched this concert of Ali Akbar Khan. And it was so amazing. It was so amazing. But the really, really kind of transformative experience I had was after he stopped playing. He lifted his sarod, thanked the audience, and he walked off. The tabla player lifted his tablas and walked off. And I was sitting there still listening to the music. And I felt that, I experienced that all the sound of people's voices talking around me and the sound of their footsteps was the continuation of the raga and the tala. The tala means the rhythm cycles and the tabla beats. A friend came up to me and said, "Let's go." And I said, "Well, the concert isn't over. It's not over." People must have thought I was crazy. But I knew at that point that I had to really further my studies in this music. And the fellow who was playing tambura on the stage, that drone instrument, is an American guy. And after everything was over, he made a little plug for Ali Akbar Khan's college in Marin County. And I knew at that point I had to go there. So I failed my classes in music at Reed. I failed my classes in religion at Reed and dropped out after the first semester and came to California and came to Marin County. My intention was to learn raga on my guitar. And so I walked into the college. By the way, the college is still there, and it's an amazing, amazing, wonderful place, even though Ali Akbar Khan himself passed 16, 17 years ago, something like that. Anyway, I walked in, and there were little practice rooms, and I heard people practicing the sarod, and the sound coming out of the practice rooms. And I was like, oh, okay, no more guitar for a while. And I was able to buy a used sarod, and I started my studies with Ali Akbar Khan. Jumping very much ahead of this chronology, I studied on and off with Ali Akbar Khan for about 40 years. There was breaks for sure, and I never felt completely proficient on the sarod, and I never felt completely proficient as far as being a classical Indian singer. But Khan Sahib's approach to music, and approach is not the right word, Khan Sahib's complete immersion in the sacred art of music was transmitted to his students. And I feel like every note I play to this very day, whether it's a bossa nova on my guitar or like an old-timey song on my banjo, everything I do musically is touched by the grace of Ali Akbar Khan. He was very, very loving, and he's also very, very harsh. He wasn't how do I say this? Within this one man was great gentleness, caring, compassion, but in the same man he could be brutally honest. But he said to us, you have it so easy with me. If you were studying with my father, he would beat you with a stick. I will beat you with a verbal stick, but never a real stick. Anyway, yeah, being with Khan Sahib, that's what we call him, was one of the greatest parts of my life. And I used to go over to his house so many times in the late afternoon. And first of all, I would give an electric guitar lesson to his son, Alam, which was really fun. Alam was 11, and he wanted to learn, Jimi Hendrix songs, and he drank it all up. He was a great, young musician. Now he's one of the most beautiful Indian classical musicians ever. But anyway, I'd go and teach him lessons, and then I would go up to Khan Sahib's room, and Khan Sahib was, it was after his nap, his bath, and his afternoon puja. Well, then it was time for chatting and drinking. And so many times I would sit around him. He'd be drinking scotch, and he would make scotch for me. And we'd all get a little bit drunk for sure, but he would tell stories of his life. And, normally he was very, very shy and reticent, but after a few drinks, he had the most amazing experiences, and every story seemed to end with a transmission about music. And it can be the wildest stories, but each one. I will share one with you, and then we'll close this chapter. Khan Sahib said that when he was 19, his father wanted to lock him in a room for 6 months, and he would be practicing, 18 hours a day. Every 3 hours, his father would tell him what raga to practice, and they would put food under the door, and it would be a complete retreat into practicing sarod and practicing raga. Well, Khan Sahib said no way, and he ran away from home. He went to Bombay, and he said that's where he learned about cigarettes, women, and alcohol. But I asked him, did you ever have any regrets about not having done that with your father? He said, no, I don't have regrets. However, if I had done that, I would have the power to demand of God. Now I can only ask.